I'm so surprised on Sunday afternoon that everyone's not in like a food coma right now. I'm Michael O'Neill, and I have a podcast called The Solopreneur Hour. You should listen if you don't already. There's a little purple app on your iPhone. You just click podcast and subscribe. It's been going for about 3 years now, this particular show, and it's been awesome. I've met a lot of people in the room from doing the show, and a lot of the speakers here, including Miss Natalie Sisson, who's hiding here in the front row. Say something in your cool accent, Natalie. Oh, we love you too, Natalie. So what I discovered, I was a web guy for like 18 years, and I became a freelancer for a few years, and then this big fancy like Fortune 500 company hired me off the couch to go be their creative director. And after about 2 months, I realized I was completely unemployable and I shouldn't be working for anybody ever again because I was terrible at it. I couldn't do the move where that middle manager that didn't know nearly as much as I did was telling me how to do my job. And I was born without a filter, so I'm really bad at being a corporate person. And what happens is, you guys keep coming to conferences like this, you keep reading cool books, and it's impossible to go back to work again because you know there's something better. There's time freedom, and there's financial freedom, and there's location freedom, which are the tenets of what I like to talk about. And I'm writing a book right now called Unemployable, because that has become the thing I've latched onto in my career, and I wear it proudly. So proudly unemployable is a lot about what we are going to learn about today. Before we do anything, I would love for you to just connect with me. If you have one of them cell phones, you just have to text Solo Hour to 33444 if you're from the Northeast, and you can get. I write one email. I don't have a spammy thing. I write one email a week that I actually write, and it's something that's going on with my audience or with my business during that week. And then I ask for you to submit questions to me that I can answer on my Friday Q&A show. So my show is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And and today, I hope we have time to do a little Q&A action as well. So before I totally get started, if someone could tell me how many of you are kind of in a 9 to 5 that you don't want to be in right now? Just like show of hands. I just want to get a read in the room here. So keep your hands up for me, please. And all the way up, because it's hard to see. Oh, that's all right. We got a pretty fair amount of people that hate their boss. So good. Well, this is great, because then this will be, hopefully not a complete and utter waste of your time. So the three things that I like to focus on are time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. And they are listed in order of difficulty. Time freedom is really easy. You can just tell your boss to go F himself and you have time freedom. It's like a really easy thing to do. You're like, all right, cool, I'm off for the day. Now, what you do with your day is a little more complicated. Location freedom, I live here in San Diego now. Whenever anybody asks me, why do you live in San Diego? I'm like, I don't understand the question. And that's because I lived, I was in Philadelphia, and then I was in Denver, because that was nicer than where I lived in Philly. And then I kept migrating, and that's it. I've gone as far west as I can without going into the ocean. So my career I was a web guy, and I was a branding guy, and I was a designer. And I did that for a long time. I did it for clients, and I did it for myself. And somewhere around 2004, both my parents got sick. And within 4 years, my dad passed away, and then my mom passed away 7 months later. And my dad was not a huge surprise. My mom was a gigantic surprise. And I found myself in the process of the U.S. healthcare system. Mom falls and breaks her hip, needs 24 days of rehab, insurance pays for 10, it's $2,000 a day. And so while I had my awesome 6-figure design job, that was my life. And so everything I had up until that point went away. So my 401k and my house and my cars and all of it went away. And so one of my biggest dreams in my life was I had the kind of dad, very Mad Men generation, the kind of dad that would drive cross country in the Winnebago but wouldn't jump on a flight to Paris for 6 hours. So we never did any international traveling. And to try to heal from this, because it was just chaos, I said, I'm going to do it anyway. So I decided to take them to Europe. I got a little Italian Parmesan cheese shaker, and I put their ashes in it, and I went to Europe for 4 months. And they're on they're in the Sistine Chapel. They're on the beaches of Normandy. And like sometimes I had to go a little Shawshank Redemption because you're not allowed to spread ashes in the Sistine Chapel. But it was this amazing cathartic experience for me where I got to, really heal, which is something we don't a lot of times have time to do in our lives. When something bad happens or even something great happens. My neighbors just had a baby. And, we don't have the same setup in the States as we do in other places in the world where you get like a nanny and the parents can be with the newborn. And so you find yourself making compromises all the time for time freedom. And we get these 10 days a year or 2 weeks a year to go do things that we love and be with family that we love. Over Christmas, my brother moved from San Francisco to Denver again, and we got to spend like 5 days on the most epic brotherly road trip ever. And I could never have done that unless I had time freedom. So when you think about your job and how much actual money you make, and you're thinking about jumping to the next thing, factor in the time freedom like it's worth a ton of money, because it is worth a ton of happiness for you. It's worth $40,000 or $50,000 a year to get to go do whatever you want whenever you want and spend times with your family and your loved ones, and it really is. So that time is very short. When I came back from Europe, I had $14 in my pocket. Literally, that's what was in my bank account when I landed on my connecting flight from Brussels to Denver. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. What I knew I didn't want to ever do again was work an hour for $1. I never wanted to do that again. I was like, I'm not going to do client work like that again. So I didn't. And that meant I had to do a lot of things in my brain. I had to fix some paradigms that had been installed in me. Or is it instilled? Installed? One of the insts. And I had to figure that out. And I met this dude that was in Denver this is the golden age of internet marketing, probably like 2009, where he could just spend a ton of money on Facebook ads and a bunch of people would go to a landing page and they would buy the thing he was selling, and he was making like $5,000 a day. That was like his life. And I said, I want to do what that is because that sounds way better than what I'm doing. So I said, work with me. Like, will you help me? And this is the first thing that I didn't know at the time. Hi, welcome, Sam. Good to see you. Have a seat wherever you like. I didn't know it at the time, but me asking for coaching was one of the biggest steps I could take on this journey of solopreneurship. Me realizing I needed help, and this guy was somewhere where I wanted to be, so I'm going to ask him. And he said, I'll help you, but first we got to do a little work. You got to read some books, and this is where I learned to be sexy. I've got a set of books that I have read. And if you read them, if you're struggling to figure out how you want to do this, if you read these books in this particular order, you'll have that same front door you've had for years, but the landscape outside will look completely different. And many of you have read many of these books, so don't think this is going to be a huge surprise. You can get all of them here. They're called the Sexy Seven. And you guys know what kit.com is? It's so rad if you don't already. Kit.com is a website where you get to put together little curated lists of things that you use in your regular life, and then just share that whole thing with your friends, and they can just go buy them. So in this case, all these books are on Amazon or whatever, but here's what they are in order. You don't have to write this down if you don't want to. You can just click on that link. Or if you do that solo hour 33444 thing, I'll find you after this. But books number 1 and 2, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. That taught me the initial vocabulary of wealth, and then the Cash Flow Quadrant taught me, all right, this is sort of how people speak in sentences about it. Then The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. That was the thing that said, oh, wait a second. You mean I can run any kind of business from anywhere? I don't need to be tethered to a gig. And it allowed me to be a lot more creative with, well, what is a job or what is a career that I could do based on a skill set that I already have? And we're going to talk about how to optimize that in a second. Then book number 4 is called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. If I was speaking at a group of millionaires right now, and I said, what book most influenced your business? Most hands, I think, would go up for The E-Myth Revisited. While he was by far my most difficult interview on the Solopreneur Hour, he was a guy that completely changed my life. And that's a book that, if you are building your business, initially, this allows you to think about how to work on the business and not in the business, which is critical for success. Oops, I shouldn't be doing that. I'm not clicking ahead yet. Book number 5 is called StrengthsFinder 2.0 by Tom Rath. What that is, it's essentially an online test that has a lot of gray to gray questions. It makes you answer them very quickly with whatever your initial instinct is, and it's like 140 questions. You spit that thing out, and by the time you're finished, it will tell you your 5 greatest strengths, and it is uncannily accurate. I've done it a couple of times, and it's been nails both times. Like, wow, okay. But what's great about that is that you figure out what to double down on, and then what to outsource, and what to complement yourself with. And that's a huge, tumultuous thought process when you're just starting becoming unemployable. Then, if you want to be online, Crush It by Gary Vee is book number 6. And book number 7 is something that gets so overlooked, but because it was my career for so long, it's branding. And it's a book called Zag by Marty Neumeier. And again, you can just go to this link and not have to write all these down. It's just click and you see them all. Zag will show you how to make a business in a super crowded, very busy marketplace and find a little white space where you can step in and actually be successful. Hint, hint, hint. Yes, I'm looking right at you. So, what are you going to do? How do you take those things that you already know and turn them into a thing? So there's a practice. So sorry about my cough. There's a practice. That's why I asked for a handheld and not like one of these mics, so I'd just be hacking in your voice the whole time. There's a practice of when you're at a conference and someone says, well, what do? You want to be able to answer that question in like 6 words, right? My buddy Clay Hebert has this, it calls it the 6-word intro. And in my case, I say, I take other unemployable people like myself and help them take their hobbies and their skill sets and turn them into a business. That's how I would answer that question succinctly. So the goal is, how do you figure out what you are armed with and how to do something with it? I was just at a drum camp, like literally like a drummer's camp all week. I just landed like 2 hours ago. And so I'm like feeling my groove all the whole time. But one of the guys that was there is a guy who manages a casino. He's literally like a pit boss at a casino. And he's been doing it for a long time. And he said, well, I don't know how to take what I do. I'm going to walk around a little bit instead of being stuck in one spot. I don't know how to take what I know how to do and make it a thing. And he goes, I don't know of any other casinos out there. And I was like, you stop thinking casino. What do you have to do as a pit boss? You've got to be able to watch people at all times. You've got to be super situationally aware. You're really, really concerned about theft and shrinkage, is what we call it, in the retail world. Like, people are stealing stuff all the time. They're trying to get over on you. I said, what's to stop you from taking all of that experience you have, emailing Target corporate and saying, I can teach your employees how to watch for theft a lot better and save you hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year. My fee is $5,000 to train 50 people. And then all of a sudden, Target's sending you around the world 20 times to go teach their employees, and you just made $100,000 doing something you already know how to do. So this is the test. This is it's called the breakup exercise, and it requires a mullet. So you guys first have to get a mullet if you don't have one already. Anybody know who this is? All right, good. Well done, sir. One of my generation. This is MacGyver. Do you know MacGyver's coming out again? They have a new MacGyver. I might actually watch that show. I was very heartbroken in 2003. Jennifer DePasquale broke my heart. And it was terrible. And it was like, it was one of those things where you don't eat and you're like, oh, this is awful, it's terrible. And someone gave me this exercise to do, and it completely changed my heartbreak. So if any of you are going through a heartbreak, I got a little something for you. But it's also great because I've translated that to this exercise. And what you do is you make 2 columns. This is for the breakup exercise in case you guys are going through it. 2 columns, and you write pros and cons. And in the left column, you write all the pros of the relationship, like all the great things that you love. Oh, I love snuggling on the couch. I love when we watch Game of Thrones on Sundays, all those things. And then the cons, you write all the bad stuff. Then, and this is the important part, you cross off anything that you could get from any relationship. I can watch Game of Thrones on the couch with whoever the next girlfriend is too. That's not unique. What you're left with, the 2 or 3 things, those are the things you get to mourn. That's the thing you go, oh yeah, I'm going to have to let those go. It's a bummer. I'm not going to find it like a, Australian skydiving instructor right away, whatever it is. So that's what you get to mourn. But it accelerates the process. Like, oh my God, I'll never Netflix binge with anybody again. I feel like you guys are all in a food hangover right now. So we're going to do the same kind of thing. I want you to, for the exercise, write down everything you know how to do. And that includes like child rearing or inflating a bike tire or whatever it is. Like write all the things you know how to do in your life down. And these could be things, by the way, that you did before you decided to be responsible and, have kids and get married and all those things. You could, there could be things that you know how to do years and years and years ago that you just don't do anymore. Those ballet shoes could be hanging in your closet waiting for you. So with that in mind, you do that, and you start crossing off the things that are like, all right, I'm pretty sure there's no way I could monetize, like, I don't know, kissing my dog's head. Maybe you could. You got to be creative. But what you're left with, some of the things like in Target Guy's case, like, wait a second, that's actually a really viable skill to be able to be situationally aware and teach people from stealing things. You could transfer that anywhere, right? That's the important part. So whether you're doing Excel spreadsheets for your job or you're managing a team or you know how to handle animals, I mean, anything you can think of that you do that you've been trained to do, somebody somewhere needs that. And we've got like 8 billion people in the world. You only need 200 of them paying you $500 to make a 6-figure income. That's not insane. That's not a crazy thing to think about. That's like, all right, 200, okay. Now then you got to figure out how that's going to break down. But that's the exercise. Write down everything you know how to do. Cross off the things you're like, I'm pretty sure I couldn't want to change this, but maybe I can. And what you're left with is like, all right, what could I do? What part of my world can I take these things into my hobbies and make something cool out of it? An example would be I restored a vintage car. I literally found a car in a field, and it was rotting away, and a buddy of mine emailed me and said, hey, dude, this thing's in the field, and do you want it? I said, all right. And so I got it. I sold a bunch of parts off it, so I broke even on the buy itself. So I've got this hulk of rust in my garage. And I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad that said, hey, make your hobbies into a business if you can. So I said, all right, I got to finance this car build, but I'm a designer, so I had that skill already. So I designed a bunch of shirts for other nerds that like that same car, and I made like $3,000 from that to help finance the restoration. That's the kind of way you have to think, like what groups do you know, and how can you take your skills and apply them to those groups, okay? Then you got to pick a platform. So are you shy? Are you a better writer than a speaker? Are you better on video? I'll tell you that if you have, if you're a good-looking kid, use that while you still got it. All of us, before we hit the wall, just get in front of a camera while you can. It's helpful. Really, you can move the needle pretty quick. So figure out, like, I found myself better at audio than anything else. This is easy, like being on a microphone and just speaking is easier for me. And it was easy from the beginning. So, like, based on my StrengthsFinder 2.0, if I was terrible at public speaking, I wouldn't be like, hey, I want to be a podcaster and a speaker. I would go do something else. Like, I'd be a writer or something that more complemented my skill sets, okay? And there are so many ways you can do this. I used to say there's only 8 platforms. You got YouTube, you got social media, you've got books. Like, you can literally write a book and make a thing now because everyone's an Amazon bestseller. You can do live streaming, which is right now the belle of the ball. If you're like a live streaming person, I'm live streaming this right now. Hello, audience. You you can build a huge audience really quickly, but then you have to know what happens on the back end. You have to know how to get people from that live stream to something like your mailing list. I said YouTube already. There are webinars. People do webinars all the time for profit. They do like old school style. They could be doing like teleseminars where you're doing something or another. You've got to get, or some way or another, you've got to get what's in your brain out to the world and be giving them good content. You can't expect someone to go, I'm just going to make a membership site, and nobody knows you or who you are or why they should be listening to you. They just don't care yet. You don't have enough of a brand that they want to pay any attention to you. So you've got to put out a bunch of free content first. And think of it like this. If you're a performer, think about literally any career you've ever heard of where someone is, like I say, a stand-up comic. Do you know how many shows they had to do before you saw them at Comedy Works or downtown at, what's the one called? The Comedy Store or whatever? They've had to do 1,000 shows for free before you got to see them for 10 minutes as the middle between the headliner and the opener. Like, they had to do a lot of work like that. And for some reason, I feel like our recent crop of online business people or offline business people are sort of expecting this amazing business to happen in like 2 months. And I'm like, man, I've been doing this for like 7 years, and we're still kind of on the climb. So what business in the history of the world, other than some crazy startup, during the mid-'90s, has accelerated that fast? Like, everyone's got to put some time in and get some reps before someone's going to go, hey, you know what? You actually do some pretty cool stuff. I'm going to pay attention to you, and I'm going to, I'm going to buy your thing. So figure out what that thing is. My litmus test is, what could I talk to you about that you would bore me off my bar stool? Like, if you got a couple of drinks in you, what would you just be talking about that you're like, oh yeah, and then it was really around the Canuter valve, and you're like, wow, I don't know what to say to you. I was speaking at a conference a couple years ago, and this dude walks up to me, and he goes, hey man, I can't figure out how to monetize my blog. And he goes, what's your blog about? And he said, I don't remember what he said. And I said, well, what is that what you like? And he goes, no, but I thought I could monetize it. I was like, well, that's not the way to make a thing. You can't just pretend like you're good at or into something. I go, what do you love? And he started talking, and then he started talking about, I love the strategy of like soccer. He's really into soccer. He was actually from Brazil, really into soccer, like loves the strategy behind it, loves how the coaches kind of do substitutions and the plays they call, and like he just lit up as soon as he started talking about it. I'm like, why is your blog not about like every World Cup match going on right now? That's what you should be talking about, because if all of a sudden you get 10,000, by the way, most popular game in the world, if you can find 10,000 people a month to look at your content, some advertiser is going to start paying you a couple bucks to get in front of them, like Wilson or Spalding or somebody, to show them what good soccer balls are, because they know you've brought this directed, targeted audience of those people. So we have to think about those things that we love and then pick a platform to talk about them. And don't worry about monetization. If I could tell you how many times I've come home and something has happened and I've had to re-record a show, or something has happened to one of my podcasts, and it's like Tuesday at 1:30 a.m. and I'm really tired, and the show comes out like Tuesday at 1:30 a.m., then I got to, all right, I guess I hit record and I got to do a show. And I love it. Within like 15 minutes, I'm just into it again, and it's fine. So you got to find it. You got to find the thing that you want to do when things are shitty and not when things are going great. You got to do those things, because it's like when things are bad and you're like, I got to slog out a blog post. You want to get a couple minutes into that blog post and go, ooh, this is really cool, and start nerding out about it. So whatever that is, find that. This is a little hack that I do every time I start a new sort of idea, which is the first thing I do after I go through Zag, the book, and figure out what the brand is going to be. I set up a Gmail account with thatbrand@gmail.com. Here's why I do that. When you start a blog or a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever the thing is you're doing, you will have at least 10 auxiliary companies that you need to work with, whether it's Aweber or Infusionsoft or Schedule Once, or like you'll have scheduling companies, you'll have emailing companies, you'll have web hosting companies, you'll have, I got to get my domain name, you'll have a CRM, you'll have all these different things. You want those all under one umbrella, first and foremost. You want to send all of those contacts to that one umbrella, and you do not want it mixed in with your regular email. Because if you want to outsource that stuff down the road in a couple of years, you don't want to hand over the keys to your regular email to your virtual assistant. So have everything in its own little universe. So you'll always know, because I don't know how many of you, but I lose my passwords sometimes. And I'm like, I don't remember even, Skype was like, can you please tell me what date you signed up for Skype? And it was like, dude, it was like 2004. I don't know. And I literally had to start a new Skype account because I couldn't remember the date that I got Skype because I got hacked. Anyway, good job, Skype. So do that. Do the Gmail thing, because then you can connect your calendar, your Gmail calendar to it. You can connect your scheduling account. You can connect all that stuff to this one account. So do that. It's really important to do that because you're then set up for, for long-term growth. These two things, how am I doing on time here? Not bad. Huh? All right, good. Thank you. Appreciate that. How you guys all doing, by the way? You okay? Am I just wailing on you right now? Are you okay for a minute? Let's all breathe. Okay. So I had no money. I was living in Denver. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew that I was going to keep, this is what I figured out. You may have heard this, but the how is none of your business. The how is none of your business. So if you go, hey, I want to make a t-shirt business supporting my underwater basket weaving, and you're like, I don't really know how to do that because I don't know how to do a website, and I don't know how to do this, don't worry about it. You're going to figure that out. But if every one of us, if I said right now, everyone, there is $100,000 sitting in a bag on top of this hotel. You have 15 minutes to get it. Are you going to get it? Is anybody in this room not going to figure out how the F to get on the roof of that hotel and get it? Like, you're going to parachute in. Like, you're getting on that roof to get the money. Do you know how? No idea. You don't even know where the roof is. You know it's up, but you don't know how you're going to get there at all. So when you look at, you're sitting at the base of the mountain and looking at this hike that you want to do, you don't know if you're going to have to jump a fence or go over a creek or any of those things. It doesn't matter. You just know I'm getting to that thing. So if we did our job previously and you found that thing that you totally loved, and you're like, I want to build a business out of this thing, it's going to be awesome, then nothing's going to stop you from doing that. And if you don't feel like that, that might not be the right thing. Okay? So when I was, broke, I would take these little web gigs. I just got back to Denver. I was 37, had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And I would go to a coffee shop and get a chai and try to figure something out. I'd be learning and reading and doing my best to consume and try to connect and try to, get myself in order to try to figure out, what doors were going to open to me. And I figured out these two things: starbitrage and barbitrage. Starbitrage was, now, I like to go to coffee shops because I like to be out amongst my people. I don't want to just be in my house just doing my thing because I'm pretty sure that doors won't open and opportunity won't literally just come and knock on my door and say, hey, do you want to go and come to this thing and blah, blah. I'm like, it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. So I needed to be out in the world having some conversations with some people. Now, who did I want to talk to? Probably not the one where I go to the Starbucks and it's like a gas station next door and there's a junkyard and it's on the worst part of town. So what I did, as I was living in Denver, I'd go to Cherry Creek, which is the nicest neighborhood of one of them in Denver, and I'd go work from that Starbucks because I knew that no matter what, I was still surrounding myself with some successful people or, spouses of such things. And whatever conversation I had, maybe there was something I could learn from them. So, that adage, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I'm going to go spend some time with people that have done better at life, right? So that's first and foremost. I'm going to be like, all right, I'm going to, because even if nothing happened, I'm still in a nice neighborhood and it's pretty and there's, beautiful people are walking around and there's babies and birds and all of it. So, and then what I learned from that, and this is the thing that really changed the game, was barbitrage. So somewhere around 4:30, I used to go to this place called Ink Coffee in Denver, right in Cherry Creek. And then right next there was a place called, was it Jake's? Earl's. Yeah, it was Earl's, like a steakhouse. We probably have them everywhere. And 4:30, happy hour would start until 6 o'clock. And I'd go there and get like a $5 glass of wine, and I'd set my laptop up on the counter, and I would just do my thing. I would just do whatever gig that I'd scraped together. Within an hour, the most successful people in the Denver metro area were all having happy hour around me. And one thing is certain: success recognizes hustle. Inevitably, somebody would walk up and go, what are you working on there, kiddo? And I'm like, just doing whatever it was I was working on. Tell me more about that. We'd get into a conversation. From this one thing, I've been invited to yacht parties. I've had steak dinners with the CEO of Wells Fargo. I've been on golf courses, I've tons of dinners paid for, just because what happens is you start getting into a conversation. I knew a lot about social media, and a lot of times upper-level management knew nothing about social media. So I'd get into this conversation. I'd spin their head in about 34 seconds. You're like, dude, you're coming to dinner with us. And then that would be it. And all of a sudden, I'd be sitting at this dinner with these super powerful business people, and doors would open, and more doors would open, and more doors would. And I would just keep saying yes. And that's one thing that if I can implore upon you today, or impart upon you. Sorry, I've been up a long time. Start saying yes to things you wouldn't normally say yes to. It's like the Jim Carrey movie. I've interviewed now well over 400 people on my show, and a common theme for those people are they say yes first and then figure out how to make it work when they go through it. And most average people will say maybe and then come up with 10 reasons why they couldn't have done something. There's no time, there's no money, there's no blah, blah, blah. But my buddy David Wood was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, which ironically started my podcast career, but that's another whole story. And he met this guy they were in the British Virgin Islands or something. And climbing Kilimanjaro requires effort and planning. It's not a thing you just do on a whim. But they were about to go do it. David meets this guy at the bar. They're chatting. And this was Tuesday. They're leaving for Kilimanjaro on Thursday. And they get in a conversation. David goes, hey, do you want to go climb Kilimanjaro with us? And the guy goes, yeah, all right. And figured it out. He literally had to call his wife and, can you order $20,000 of things from REI and have them overnighted? And she did. And he climbed Kilimanjaro. I mean, obviously not all of us are in that position, but there is something today. In fact, this very thing, I just landed an hour ago. I'm doing this speaking gig. I got an opportunity from a guy yesterday that there's no way I could pass up because of who he was and what the opportunity was. So I'm leaving here and then driving that vintage car that I restored up to LA to do this huge event tomorrow. And I've had 4 seconds to myself in 9 days, but it doesn't matter. I'm like, yes, I'm going to do that. I guarantee something cool is going to happen tomorrow. I'm going to meet someone awesome. Something rad is going to happen. I don't know what yet. It doesn't matter. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to figure it out. I don't know where I'm staying tonight. It's just how it works. So start saying yes. And arbitrage. That's where you have to have your 6-second, this is what I do. Have that shit ready for when someone goes, what are you doing? And you go, bang, bang, bang. And they go, tell me more about that. And this is the way to structure that is I help blank do blank, generally. I'm going to get into how you're going to learn a lot more about this stuff. These things right now, I didn't get a chance to hang with you guys. I wish I had, at the parties and such last night. There's another one tonight. I also will not be able to hang out with you guys. But you want to go to a conference like this per quarter. And you want to be super prepared for that conference. And boy, are you in luck. I have a free course called Conference-topia that you can just take. Just go do it. It's about an hour of content, but it teaches you how to walk into a conference just like this, know exactly what to say, have a plan going into it so that no matter what the content is, if you were I saw Michael O'Neill, it was a total shit sandwich, it was terrible. But I loved the conference. It was really good because you got all these questions answered about your business. And this is something that was so repeatedly asked of me, and how are you building your business so quickly? I'm because I go to conferences, I connect with rad people. They go, hey, do you want to speak at my thing? I go, sure, because I say yes to everything. I'm all right, we'll figure that out. And that's how these things happen. When I launched my podcast, I had a who's who for my first few weeks of the show because I'd gone to a ton of conferences and met these people and shake their hands. And and connected with them, and you can break bread with someone. That goes a long way in the world. And I would wager that our elders of the room, the people that have been around longer than anybody else, would tell you that relationships are the number one, really the number one thing that you can do to not only build your business, but build a happy life, right? Front row, yay or nay? So it's like if you can do that, if you can build those relationships, you will become a solopreneur a lot faster than if you just go and stop just taking courses after courses after courses after courses. You can do that, but give yourself time to implement. You got to actually do something. You got to put in the reps at the moment. I'm terrible at focus, as you've noticed. But so I've had to go through a whole process of hacking my own inadequacies in my little fluttery squirrel brain. I found two things that are really cool. Mike Vardy, who spoke here in this room earlier, I interviewed him a couple months ago, and what I found for myself, and I've experimented a ton with this, from those sine wave apps to whatever, I need to figure out a way to get my brain to chill out so I can just do something for an hour. My buddy John Lee Dumas does a thing where he is super focused for 42 minutes and then takes an 18-minute break, and he does that 4 times during the day. And he's more productive than anyone I know. So it's not like you have to put in 12 hours, but, I should note this too. I didn't include this, but I want to tell you guys this. One thing that completely changed my world this year was don't prioritize your schedule your priorities. If you're feeling like, man, I'm getting a little soft around the belly, you better schedule some time to fix that. If you want to spend more time with your kids, schedule some time to spend more time with your kids, and then work your work in around that. We're not meant to be here just to live around your work schedule. You're meant to have an amazing, fulfilled life that also gets you a paycheck every now and again, right? That's what we're here for. So schedule your priorities. What John does is he just makes sure that he puts those 4 hours of focus in, and then he's pretty much done for the day. When you're a new solopreneur, the tendency is, I got to work until 1 a.m. and then get up at 6 and do it all over again. So make time for, literally on your schedule, make time for your workouts, make time to eat well, make time for your kids and your dog and whatever, and schedule your work around that stuff. Say, I'm going to do a 3-hour block right now, then I'm going to go to the dog park. I play a ton of racquetball. That is on my schedule. That never goes away. I know 3 o'clock on Mondays, I'm off to go play racquetball with my buddy. And that's just how it is. I don't care what else is happening around that. So that is a priority that I've scheduled into my life. That's just a little aside. I found that there's a station on Pandora called Ambient, which is like a spa station. But man, does it... I don't even hear it after a couple of minutes, which is what you want. You want your brain to be so relaxed that I can just sit there and crank on it. And then the other one is, the one that Mike Vardy told me about is, and this is scary. Who has kids here? I don't have any that I'm aware of, but how many? You got a few? Do any of your kids play video games? Anyone? You know how much psychology is built into the music of video games? It is bonkers. They have full-time psychologists that will tune these wavelengths of the music, so the kid just wants to play and play and play. And as someone who's it's been, oh my God, it's 4 a.m, I have to go to bed. That has been me in my life. That's because that's all by design. The cool part of this is on YouTube, you can get video game soundtracks. And it's actually really great. They're great for focus music. And that's something I learned on Mike Vardy's website, The Productivityist. So a couple more slides, and then we'll do Q&A in a couple minutes. And the other thing that I alluded to earlier is that I didn't know it at the time, but coaching is massive. Getting someone to help you through this process is gigantic. And we're all very stubborn, I got to do it myself. And you do. You have to go through it a little bit yourself. But at some point, you go, man, I'm just starting to get a little traction, but I wonder if I could take this to the next level. And that's where coaching comes from. Coaching can be free. Coaching can be listening to podcasts. Coaching can be lower level, where you're paying a couple of bucks per month, less than $100 a month. Coaching can be very expensive, where you're paying $25,000, $50,000 a year. There's many people in this room that have coaching programs, including my friend Natalie Sisson. The Freedom Plan, right? Is that right? Little plug? Boom. Yeah, of course. Here's the other thing. is that I probably promote my friends' coaching programs, like Chris Ducker's Upreneur. John has his, and Natalie, of course. But I probably promote them more than I do my own, because it doesn't matter what you think of. Like, if you like how I speak and how I train, then you're going to go with me. If you like how they speak and how they train, you go with them. But I will say I don't know any of them that are peddling BS. They're all doing it with great intention, and they're literally trying to help everybody. So figure out who you like and who resonates with you. I tend to be a very East Coasty, like, dude, just get this thing done and let's move on. Some people need to be like, I need to check in with you right now and see if we're feeling on the same wavelength. That's not me at all. So, but that could be a million other coaches that do that. That's great. Go run with them. So I do have a little group. It's called Solo Lab. And if you want it, it's just iwantsololab.com. And it's like a quarterly thing generally. But we have a great group. They're all very motivated. This isn't like a super sales pitch. I just want to let you know there are things like this out there for those of you who want these things and want to move the needle a little faster. Have a look at this. Have a look at Ducker's Upreneur. Have a look at Natalie's Freedom Plan. All those things.